Yo, call me Neo Metal Sideways. I'm about to ride right on it. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the Game Skates. Today, and only today, we are here to talk about Metal Sonic. That's right, if you guys saw recently, there was a death battle between Metal Sonic and Cell, and it just kind of got me thinking about Metal Sonic, got me thinking about, the movie coming up where he's gonna be in, and I just thought we'd take a bit of a comprehensive history on Metal Sonic, what kind of a villain he was, or still is, what's his potential, and where he could be at. So of course, sit down, enjoy the content, and please consider subscribing to your boy. We are damn near 80K subscribers. We've had a lot of new people, and I want us to keep the family growing. Metal Sonic, bro, the GOAT for a lot of people. One of the OG sort of like doppelganger type villains. There's always been in media, right? Like, the copy of the main character, right? And he's like, a clone version of him or a dark version of him. But I can't think of, before Metal Sonic, many characters that were like a copy of the MC that was a robot, because Metal Sonic came out in the 90s, right? I feel like it was before the big boom of robot copies of stuff, besides, if you think of Gundam and probably some anime stuff, right? And obviously making his debut in Sonic CD, right? I don't think Sega really knew at the time how popular this character was going to be. Metal Sonic's design from the start was always so cool, right? Because they could have just made like Sonic, right? And he was just, metallic, but they did a really cool job really early on making Metal Sonic almost like a distinct looking character while still being, very distinctly like designed after Sonic. But he does look really different. He has like claw grip hands. He's got the jet engine in the chest, right? He's got, a more metallic shape on the top for the quills. Like, he doesn't copy the same like quill shape as Sonic. You've got, the legs that look a little different. But obviously, when it came to Eggman's greatest creation at the time, he wanted to make something incredibly powerful. Now, it's important to know the number one thing about Metal Sonic is that his whole thing is adapting, right? He can get stronger, he can get more powerful, he can copy your abilities, and it's illogical. Like, he doesn't just, take his time to learn your abilities. Like, no, as soon as he sees someone do a move or an ability, no matter how unrealistic it is, he can do it. So, like, if you can do a key blast, he can do a key blast. You know what I mean? If you can go super fast, he is going to go super fast. Like, the way he's able to copy abilities and adapt is sort of unbelievable, and he has an insane amount of power. Obviously, you have Sonic CD, right, which I think is probably one of the first instances of a really cinematic fight in a Sonic game. Like, the whole gimmick in Sonic in Stardust Speedway, when you're doing the chase against Metal Sonic, and then you go for the fight at the end of it. Like, I loved that fight throughout Sonic CD, because it was just like, oh man, this is like, I'm running away from this difficult version of me, and he's like jumping and swinging and doing some attacks, right? And then you also have something incredible like Sonic the OVA. I really feel like Sonic the OVA was the first time a lot of people really fell in love with Metal Sonic, right? You have this character that like he's presented to you in a menacing way, the way the eyes are glowing, the way he's super aggressive towards Sonic, right? Without saying a damn word. And I think that's what's also so incredible about Metal Sonic is that even before, right, we got his forms like, Neo Metal, right, or, Metal Overlord, where he was talking, right, he is a menace, you know what I mean? He's a scary character. To this day, right, I feel like they can get away with Metal Sonic not saying a damn word as long as he, keeps getting, more scary, more powerful. And what's incredible about Metal Sonic is he has infinite potential. If anything, his only shackle is really Eggman, because he is inherently programmed to obey Eggman, right? And we've seen the times where he's betrayed that trust for more power, such as like, Neo Metal Sonic, Super Neo Metal Sonic from IDW, to where he's got his own super form. Like, he's crazy. Like, he is a character that has the potential to be one of the most insane characters in Sonic and IDW, and potentially even future games and the movies coming up. But let me focus a little bit again and talk a bit about the OVA, because yeah, the OVA was a lot of people's real first love of of Metal Sonic, you know, the fight between them, you know, obviously the clash with the, you know, everything I'm going to do, that, bit of strange, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like that OG encounter, right? Just the idea of this character that can match Sonic's ability, I think is scary, right? Because Sonic is broken. And so you take a character like Metal Sonic, who could also be broken, and that's kind of crazy, right? Because Metal Sonic, at the end of the day, thinks that he is the original Sonic, right? He truly believes in his heart of hearts, well, he doesn't have one, but in his circuits of circuits, that he is the original Sonic and that he cannot comprehend or understand that he is the clone, which makes it such a fascinating character that it would be nice for them to explore. And I don't know if they would ever tackle that, because we got to get into, you know, a bit of a problem that Sega or Sonic Team has had with Metal is they haven't had really a clear vision for the character in a long time, right? Because after the OVA and Sonic CD, I feel like, you know, the next big idea they had for him was, you know, to be the main villain of a game, and that came in Sonic Heroes, right? Sonic Heroes, he is the main villain of the game. He's pretending to be Eggman throughout it. You know, you get the crazy Metal Overlord fight where he truly is becoming and thinking that he is the original, and it's a cool boss fight. You get the supersonic fight, you know, you get a big speech and everything. You get the long, extremely long transformation sequence, but that is kind of the end of like the major role that Metal Sonic has had in a game. Ever since then, I mean, yeah, he was in Knuckles Chaotix, he is in Sonic the Fighters, he's in Sonic Mania as a boss fight. Like, he is a constant in appearances, right? But he's lost his sort of menacing vibe, right? He's sort of been like downclassed to like jobber a little bit, right? Yeah, I think we can all kind of agree that it's been a while since the menacing aura of Metal Sonic has been around. I mean, like, what the last thing he really did was, I guess you could argue in Shadow Generations they did, you know, the Metal Overlord refight, which was kind of cool, but even then, that's like technically you're going in the past, right? So it's not like it's a new appearance for him, right? Because he was in Shadow the Hedgehog, he's not in Sonic 06 even, he's not in Sonic Unleashed, he's not in Sonic Colors. I guess he's in Sonic Colors Ultimate, but you know what I mean, he's not in that OG game. In Sonic Generations, he's there, but again, it's a classic Sonic boss fight. It's not like he's a new villain appearance. He's not in Lost World. He's in Forces, he's like, what? He's barely there. He's like oh yeah. Oh my god, I self-remembered the Sonic Forces appearance and I upset myself, right? Where he's just like a big boss. It's awful, right? They don't do my man's justice. And I think that this is a character that has so like, and you know, we always talk about this with Sonic characters, like this is one of the potential characters of the Sonic series, right? I think everybody loves Metal Sonic in some way. Like, I don't know, I've never met someone that's just like, I don't like Metal Sonic, right? I feel like everybody in some way or another likes the character and wants to see the character do more, right? But is limited to what, you know, appearances and things that he's had in recent years. You know, he's lost that aura, right? That's why something, you know, like even the death battle that just recently happened, right? People are seeing again that sort of spark that the character has. And in fact, he was also the post-credit scene teasing up what potentially Amy could be against him. Now, granted, you know, this has also caused a lot of concern for people, right? Because when they saw that post-credit scene with all the Metal Sonic clones, you know, people were wondering like, all right, like, what are we doing with Metal, right? Because that's always a big thing with Metal that's a concern now. It's like, all right, is he just going to be robot fodder, right? In the next, you know, movie, is he just going to be an army of metals that are easy to destroy? Is he going to be the main villain? Like, are they going to Neo Metal Sonic him where he talks, you know, he's got the new form with the big spikes? Is he going to be just like one big boss fight leading into something else? Like, that's what's insane about Metal Sonic, right? Is they've sort of put him in a position where he could be, you know, generic robot fight number 5000, right? Or he could unironically be like the big bad. I mean, we're talking about a character that can take control of the Chaos Emeralds just like the gang can, right? Which I think any character that can, like, you know, use the power of the Chaos Emeralds is scary in one way or another, right? But again, they're not always consistent about how he is, right? I think about that Sonic Mania Adventures episode where, you know, it's classic Amy, you know, taking Metal Sonic back to the place. Like, now, granted, this is a bit of like Sonic in general, right? I think no matter what, the Sonic franchise has this interesting thing where it's a family series, right? But it also tackles like darker themes, which is why, you know, Eggman, right? Eggman's a psychopath. Everybody knows that. We all agree with that, right? He is like, if you look at the story-wise, that is a psychotic character, right? But, you know, because it's still an IP that people love and care about, they still have moments, you know, where they do Tales to Use, where Eggman comes over and, like, he hangs out and he laughs about stuff. Or you have funny animated shorts where he's involved in, right? But it's like, that's, I think, in some ways, sort of the magic of Sonic, that it's a very flexible franchise, right? But it does kind of hurt the potential of Metal Sonic in the series. Now, let's talk a bit about what they could do with Metal Sonic, right? Because, you know, we're about to get this movie appearance, and I'm hoping, and please, obviously, in the comment section below, let me know what you'd love to see them do with Metal Sonic. My hope is that, you know, I see a lot of people talk about next year. I think it's going to be a sort of mix of Metal and Amy. Obviously, you know, with Amy, she is going to be a more focal character for a lot of people, but I do think they could do a lot with Metal Sonic, right? I don't necessarily think he's going to be the villain of the next game, but I do think he could play a major part. And dude, I mean, he has a sister now, right? He has got one of the most powerful siblings in media going on with him. Now, granted, Sage is not as broken as some people say. I mean, she's got, you know, she can teleport in and out, she can throw stuff, you know, she has some telekinesis, she's got some hacking abilities, but like, you're talking about a character who's crazy in tech that could potentially, you know, hack into Metal, you know, or mess with Metal, or make things crazier for that character, enhance him. And we're looking at like a potential crazy boss. I mean, could you imagine a like Metal Sonic boss fight, like of Metal and Sage working together with combined abilities, you know, with the teleportation, with like the tossing abilities, with, you know, revival of mechanism, like potential manning it? Like, that would be such a good idea, right? And I would love to even see like, what's the dynamic between Metal Sonic and Sage. You know, I know we're actually gonna have an IDW soon where, you know, it covers, you know, the Eggman family of characters, right? But it's like, yeah, what is the dynamic between Sage and Metal? Because so far, the only interaction we have of Sage and Metal is the end of Murder of Sonic, where they're both standing wearing a t-shirt that Eggman gave them, right? But to be fair, I mean, Metal Sonic has betrayed Eggman straight up. I mean, if you read IDW, that first set series is basically him taking over the Eggman Empire himself. That is a scary character. I feel like in some way, Eggman has to be careful, because and Eggman knows this, right? Eggman knows that he has actually created a terrifying being. Like, he has created a monster that he has to consistently like raid in and take under control. Otherwise, it is a devastating demon. I mean, we are talking about, like, it's funny, right? People would think Sonic and Shadow, right? The like Shadow, if he was evil, he could be a destructive force of nature. Try Metal, bro. Metal Sonic can do chaos control, bro. Like, Metal Sonic can copy any abilities. He can copy Sage's abilities. He can copy Sonic's, Shadow's, any of the crew. Like, you're talking about a character that has literally, he could copy the End's ability. Like, we're talking about something that can copy bio data on like an insane level, bro. And I think, you know, that would almost be awesome. Side tangent, be awesome as a Smash character. Imagine Metal Sonic was a Smash character and he could copy any character's abilities, right? But it would go further than how Kirby does it, because with like Kirby has like one special. It would be crazy if with Metal he was just like a complete copy character, where like he could just adapt any character's moveset if he reads them, and which would be kind of crazy. Now, whether they go through with something like this or not is a tough tell, right? Because with Metal Sonic, it is a consistent appearing character, right? He's not a character that's been a big appearance, but he's always there, right? He is a perma character in every spin-off game, right? In every, you know, he's even, you know, an assist trophy, not an assist trophy inside, but he's a trophy in Smash, right? He always gets recolors and skins in the mobile games. Like, it is a character, like, you can always tell in Sega has characters where they're like, all right, you're part of the rotation, you know what I mean? Like, you're in here, you're popular, people like, you know, they'll buy your merch, they'll buy your stuff, right? But we need to bring him back into the fold as like a main focus and villain, right? And the way I sort of pictured it for the next game is, yeah, I would love to see that dynamic between him and Sage really like flourish, so he can use new abilities, right? But like, imagine if they did make him the villain of the next game, right? Bring back Neo Metal, right? And have him be a big threat and a big problem to a potential Sky City or a world. Like, imagine he's dude, oh my God, like I'm like brainstorming as we're recording this, right? Like, could you imagine a world where in the next game, like he sort of overturns everything? Like, he's the heel moment of the, is that what you call it in wrestling? The heel turn of the next game, right? Where like Eggman's doing his thing. Eventually you have Metal Sonic. He's been reading and copying the bio data the whole time. He knocks Eggman out the way. He's just like, step aside, right? As he is, like, you know, copied the abilities of Sage, and now everybody has to work together to stop Metal Sonic. That would be so incredibly cool. I would love to see something like that, and I would like to see, like, you know, that OG race in Stardust Speedway between Metal Sonic and Sonic. Could you imagine like a modern 3D version of that, where like him and Metal are like clashing towards each other, you know, bouncing back and forth, right? But again, the problem with Metal 2 is he is always outclassed by Sonic, you know, because of the lack of heart, and you can't really redo that incredibly well. Now, granted, we have had the potential rumors for a long time now. You know, these are very old rumors at this point. I don't even think they matter, but we can talk about them for the sake of this. The potentials of a Sonic Heroes remake, you know, that's been talked about a lot, and I feel like, you know, the Heroes remake makes more and more sense as, even if it's not happening, as like a concept, right? Because if you think about it, you know, they've reestablished Team Sonic, right? They've reestablished the Chaotix with the Chaotix case file stuff. They've reestablished Team Dark, right? They've now introduced Diamond Cutters into the fold with like your Tangle Whispers, you know, Lanolin Jewels, whoever they want to add in there, right? You know, and I think Silver Blaze and who else, you know, some people say Marine or whoever could be potential additions to that game, right? But that would be a lot to juggle at once, you know, including Metal Sonic, probably giving him a bit more, because like, even in like Sonic Heroes, I mean, Metal Sonic he's not really a threat until like the end of the game, right? Throughout the game, you're just kind of seeing him teleport in and out. At the end of a cutscene, you're turning to goo, changing forms. I mean, that's another scary thing about Metal Sonic, is like how he can change his appearance too. Like, that shit is scary, bro, because I'm like, damn, well, where is that guy? You know, at all times he could be any character roaming around, right? But when it comes to a character like Metal Sonic, there is infinite potential. I would love to see a return to Metal Overlord, but I do think the most fascinating thing about Metal, Neo Metal, right? Because Neo Metal is the form that I feel like is the most cohesive as a character, right? Where he does talk a lot, you know, that's where he has his more menacing aura. But there is also a fear of that original design, you know, with the red eyes, where he doesn't say a word, he just adapts, he just learns, right? And he pulls off some of the craziest shit you might see in the entire franchise, right? Like, that is something that I really hope the next movie captures, right? I think that's what we all kind of agree with. Like, I think movie 4 is going to be a big telling moment for the fans of like how they're going to treat Metal Sonic going forward, right? Because he's either going to be, you know, robot fodder, where he is just a race, he's just, you know, a quick fight, you know, and then he's out of the way, or they could make him one of the most powerful characters out there. And like, my thing with Metal Sonic is it a character that you eventually have to kill, right? Because that's what's scary about him. It's like, all right, like, what do you do with Metal? Because I feel like Metal, unlike Eggman, is allowed to be killed, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like with Eggman, there's obviously a no death mandate. Like, you cannot kill Eggman. That's going to be a permanent villain in the rotation, no matter what, right? But with Metal, I feel like, you know, you can get rid of him in some way. Now, granted, they kind of killed him in Sonic the OVA back in the day when he melts in the fire. And so what do you do with a character that is potentially that dangerous and scary? Can you get a perma kill on Metal? Does he follow that same mandate where he always has to be around? But what I love so much about Metal, there is no moment where like Metal Sonic saves the day or he turns good or anything. Like, he is always scary, right? And that's what I think is so fascinating about the character, is like, he is one of the few Sonic characters that doesn't fall into the trappings of, you know, being funny in an animated short. Like, again, they'll do funny things to him, like, again, the Psyche adventure short with Amy, right? And moments like that, right? But he is always classed as, you know, a psycho killer, and I hope they continue to do that, man. Like, I would love, dude, You know, like we got Shadow Dark Beginnings. Could you imagine something like that with Metal Sonic, right? Where maybe they could explore the mind of Metal Sonic, right? Go through the, the depths of the mind of the character, right? In there, and potentially see what the hell is going on in that robot's head, and then see maybe from Sonic's perspective fighting him. Like, it is just crazy the potential they could have with him. I would love, right? And this is something that's like really random that I've been thinking about lately with the character, right? And it's not really random because they were talking about it on the death battle, right? Like, they had this like quote that went so hard, dude, where they were like, maybe Metal Sonic's greatest ability that he learned is the ability to lie because he's hiding something that he's planning. But I guess I get upset at the fact that like this is a lot of what if and speculation I'm having and talking about here for a character that potentially might never do anything, really. You know what I mean? And potentially might always just be an extra boss fight. But I do think people are too harsh on Metal. People are like, oh, he never gets wins. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, he's a villain, right? He's not gonna get wins. He's always gonna get outclassed. Because I feel like a big part of Metal Sonic, right, is that like he doesn't understand why he is losing, and constantly the reminder of him losing is that like, well, you don't have a heart, you don't have friends, you don't have people to protect you. That's the one thing you'll never have. You can copy everyone's data, right? You could always be a different version of someone, but you can't be your own. And I feel like that's something that potentially could drive Metal Sonic crazy, you know what I mean? And it probably is a big reason why he is so menacing, right? Is because he cannot comprehend or understand that feeling that he is not the original of anything. It's very scary. There's a lot of like creepy vibes that Metal Sonic has and brings to the table that I think is fascinating. Imagine like the next mainline game, you find these like audio logs. You know how video games do like the audio logs thing? Like, I would love one of those for Metal, right? Where maybe like it's like in the mind of Metal Sonic, right? Where you got like insight on what goes on in Metal's head. That it could be something as scary as, die, right? Or it could be something as, existential as just like, why am I created, right? What is the meaning of life, right? Who am I, Why is Sonic acting like me, right? Like shit like that, where like you could really get into how scary the mind of a character like that. Because like, it's like, could you imagine you as a person, right? You found out that you were not the original version of yourself, right? Like your entire life went thinking, right? Like I'm Fidel, right? And then I see another version of me that's out there is better than me, and is saying that they're the original. That's what's scary, is that like Metal Sonic thinks he is the original. Like he would be like if you found out there was another version of you out there that was better than you, and you just felt like you needed to keep adapting and learning, right? But you had the scary ability to adapt, right? No matter what, you could learn that new move, you could learn that new power, but not winning is scary, right? And I think that's what's so fascinating about the character and how much they could do with them, right? Whether it is a mainline next game villain, whether it is the next Sonic movie, whether they even, it's, I remember in Sonic 4, episode 1 and 2, they tried to kind of bring back Metal, like they have Metal boss fights in that game. Like, I don't know, I feel like they care about Metal Sonic. I think they want him to be a thing, right? But obviously Sonic Team has this problem. It's a good problem to have, right? Where Sonic Team has just so many cool characters in the chamber, but realistically and logically, you can't do something with all of them right away at all times. We're seeing them sort of build the library now. Like we've had, we had Knuckles and Tails come back and be playable in Sonic Frontiers. You had, the Shadow Gang focus with Shadow Generations and all that stuff with your Shadow, right? We're about to have Amy have a big appearance, and we're about to have Metal. Like, I think that's at least the good thing, is that Metal and Amy are kind of like next in line, right? I know there's a big line, right? There's a line for Blaze, there's a line for Silver, there's a line for the Chaotix, even to have a game appearance, not just, be on audio podcasts. Like there's a long line for Sonic characters that people want to see in the spotlight. But I'm kind of happy that Metal Sonic is next in the queue, because they've sort of said for a long time now that like there is going to be movie and game synergy. And what I like about the movie and game synergy is it's not, hey, we're gonna make it like the exact movie thing, right? It's just that like, all right, now that the movie is out, let's have a thing in a game that'll make you, remind you, hey, this movie's cool, right? Now with Metal Sonic, we could see it as soon as this year. What if, right? And this is something that I've thought about, right? What if this year's game, was a Sonic CD remake, reimagined sequel, like a modern 2D Sonic game that sort of brings back the idea of the future past shit that goes on in Sonic CD. I think that could be really cool. And I think, we kind of agreed that like with Sonic CD, it has an incredible opening animation and incredible music, right? But the level design is lacking, right? It's a lot of bumpers everywhere, weird movement. And I feel like if they made a Sonic CD 2, or if they made a modern 2D Sonic game that was, where you go to the past future versions of stages, that could be really dope, man. That could be something dope. That could have been something that they've been working on for a minute. That way you get the best of both worlds. You get a 2D game out this year. You get something to prep people for the movie. You get to sort of revisit the ideas of Sonic CD because, we are doing, time travel shenanigans with Sonic Movie 4. And you could sort of introduce people to that concept and that idea. There's a lot they could do. Obviously, again, in the comment section below, let me know what are your ideas for a potential metal game or metal boss fight or metal idea. There's so much they could do. Whether it's a stage boss fight, new Sonic CD, just a side quest fight, whether it's something existential, an animated short, something. There is potential, man, infinite with Metal Sonic. So thank you all for watching, guys. Let me know what you guys think of the potential, man, of Metal Sonic. Let me know if you think this character, do you think there's more to him? Izio is going to be a jobber. Do you even fuck with him? Let me know everything in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching. You guys are the best. And of course, I will see you all next time. Peace out.